Hey, welcome to the Academy of Renaissance Thinking. I'm Willie Minix, and thank you for tuning in. I have with me a special guest today. He is my co host from the Hidden Citadel podcast. And if you haven't checked out the Hidden Citadel, you should. But this is Greg Kemp. And Greg Kemp is not just another lovely face on the internet, he is actually a trained and skilled psychologist, and he will give us lots of awesome stuff today as far as brain development. Greg, the Academy of Renaissance Thinking is a channel that basically is dedicated to brain development. So we have exercises that are on the channel about ambidexterity training. We have exercises on how to like learn how to write again if maybe you've had a stroke, um, different things like that. We have interviews with different people. So far, I've had a couple martial arts teachers on that talk about different benefits that your brain gets from practicing martial arts. I've got a guy, actually, I'm going to interview him probably next week. He's a buddy of mine that was he's a 6th degree black belt in Nimpo
Wow.
ninjutsu, but he was a sniper with Blackwater,
Yeah.
and so I'm going to be interviewing him about. But he's also had some concussion damage, and so I want to talk to him about how martial arts has helped with working with some of the kind of problems that you could actually have. So that's kind of the stuff that I talk about on this channel, and I don't update it very often, but I'm trying to be a little bit more um, proactive about
Sure.
putting more content out for people. So today I want to pick your brain. First off, I thought we would talk about learning disabilities that appear in early childhood or throughout childhood, because that's one of the areas that you're specialized in. And then I want to talk about the same kind of stuff, but for older people who maybe didn't get diagnosed with it while they were kids. And then I want to talk about any kind of exercises that you know of that people can do that just are generally helpful for brain development or
hmm
for repair or
hmm
for, anything related to the brain.
hmm
So enlighten us.
All right. So, generally speaking, if you're going to talk about a learning disability or any sort of disability, well, let's start with learning disability because we have to talk about disabilities in general. But a learning disability, the classic distinction would be the disparity, a significant, which means it's usually a point number of 16 points or more, a disparity between your IQ and and kind of your educational scores or numbers, which would mean like your IQ compared to your reading, compared to your math, compared to like uh, um, there are educational tests, the Wechslers and um, let's see, what's it called? Uh, whatever. There's several. There's the Kaufman. There's several ones
Okay.
that will they'll create a score for you that you can measure your IQ. And if there's a difference between them, then there's the which means your IQ is here, but your output is here. So in that disparity.
Explain to me first, though, before you go to that. For those of us who are laymen,
Mhm.
some of us think, well, IQ and your learning, that's all kind of intertwined. So it's
So
like, how can you have a different score for IQ and a disparity with. Can you talk about that just a minute and then
sure.
finish your thought?
All right. So first of all, IQ is an interesting thing because the history of it, you kind of have to understand the history of it. There's a Alfred Binet
Mm-hmm.
in France, where we get the Stanford Binet. It was one of the early IQ tests. Was was created in order to discern between people who are academically based and people. This is an unfortunate term, but he said we're imbeciles. That's what
Okay.
Alfred Binet. So it's like
That's where
kind
the
of like
term came from.
who has the capacity for academia and doesn't have the capacity for academia. And
Right.
then from there, the tests went through a number of revisions. David Wechsler, with his scales, the Wechsler scales, we get a lot, they call the WISC, which is the Wechsler Intelligence Scale for Children that goes to age 16, 17. And then the WACE, the adult scale, adult intelligence scale. A lot of those, um, they the IQ part of it is how well you would do in the American education system. People
Okay.
will say, "Oh, your IQ," and they're talking about like their general intelligence or their smarts or anything like that. It really is
That's
not
not it.
designed for that, because if you have 100,000 subjects and they all give a score, an answer to something, and it creates an average answer based on the multitude of responses in that 100,000, you're going to say, "Oh, well, if everybody gives that, that's the average person would give for that answer." It still doesn't make you smart or intelligent.
Right.
But so with that, a learning disability would then say, "All right, now I'm going to that's your capacity for your success in the American education system. Now I'm going to give you basic reading and math that are also standardized over a group of people, and what common answers would they give for these? Or in math, it'd be exact answers, or what is to be
Exactly.
expected from someone this age, this grade over time. What's their basic classroom knowledge? What is their basic spelling? What is their basic comprehension? And those, based on your age and your grade, will give you a determination of where you should be. Now, if your IQ is saying your IQ is pretty high for the American education system, and you are scoring below your age and grade, then you're saying there's a learning disability in there. And the learning disability could be anywhere from math, which is dyscalculia, to reading, which is dyslexia, to writing, which is dysgraphia. Um, there could be you could have an emotional disability. It used to be called emotional. Is a terrible term. They call it an intellectual. Well, I'll get back to that one. The emotional disability is where you have your capacity is in place, and there's no specific disability that's diagnostic that you can come up with as to why you're not reading, why you're not writing, why you're not.
So they would just lump
And
that into.
then you go, all right, well, it must be your emotions, an emotional disability
Okay.
kind of thing. So
Let me ask.
it used to be called emotional disturbance.
Okay.
Now, when you can then, just like you would with anything else in life, if you can kind of create compensatory strategies, if you can add some support, scaffolding, anything you do, anything that, like if your roof is leaking, you find a way to fix it, then you find a way that it won't happen again.
Right.
Fixing it and then creating a
You
resolve.
just moved to a new house.
Yeah. So what happens is, yeah. Well, it sounds like the hidden citadel topic we just talked
Yeah.
about.
Right. I know.
But in this case, you would show how to correct, which would be patching the roof. All right, this is how you fix your spelling difficulties. Now,
Right.
let's create an understanding of what your disability is, so that you won't have to have anything to patch in the future.
Right.
And so you're equipping in the short term and long term, and that's
Yes.
now. Overall,
Let me ask you.
well, there's one more thing.
Okay.
Overall, a disability, any disability, diagnostically in psychology, has to be something that is impairing you in major areas of your life: social, relational, vocational, academic, for a period of 6 months or more, in a significant way that you were impaired. If you were walking
Okay.
around basically reading okay and doing whatever, but you get frustrated with yourself and you say, "I have a learning disability." No, you don't. You know,
Right.
And if it's just something that happened with last week, no, you don't.
You don't have a
and if it's not
problem, right.
truly impaired, I've had people like, "Well, my dad my dad's bipolar because he gets mad at us sometimes." And I'm like,
Right.
what does he do for a living? Well, he's a fireman in New York City. I'm like,
Yeah,
and
that's not
he's been doing this
bipolar.
for 30 years. He's one of the best. He's not impaired.
Yeah, he's not bipolar.
He's not bipolar. He's not bipolar at all.
You just got a frustrating
He
job.
just gets mad at you because you say stupid
Yeah.
things like that. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, right. I have 3 questions.
Yeah.
Question 1. So if it's within the American education system,
Yeah.
then does that mean there would be different IQ levels based on different countries in their systems? Like
well-
if I took an IQ test in America, I might get one result, and if I took it in England, I might get another one?
Correct, because there's different phrases. Certain IQs are standardized over, like certain IQ tests are constructed over what they hope is a diverse group of people, and they try to solve for cultural differences.
Okay.
Okay, so there are some have symbols and stuff, but even within symbols, you have some variability as to what those symbols mean.
So if you
Because
just took a random IQ test on the internet, you don't know what country
oh
that's coming
no,
from,
it has no standard.
and that's not
Don't.
going to tell you
That's
anything.
because you also need human interpretation. You can't even do
Right.
Chat GPT on this because
Right.
there's a lot of nuanced stuff that goes on that I can see. Well, I just saw what you did there, and it's not even like a standard like kind of
Right.
measure of error or a standard momentum or series kind of thing that may have happened. There are specific things that you just kind of begin to understand about the person and
Well,
the
that's
story of
one
their
thing
thinking.
with the way that I think is I'm really really good at pattern recognition, and that's probably why I'm a good musician. And it's like whenever I take standardized tests, I don't even take the test. I just look for the patterns and then I
Yeah.
just skip through and fill it in. And I always ace these tests. Whenever I had to take them in school, they're like, gosh, you're like the smartest kid in the class. And it's like, I didn't even answer half the questions. I just figured out the pattern and I filled in the pattern and I got it right, you know? It was like, what is that? That's not saying anything about my intelligence other than that I'm really good at recognizing the pattern and figuring out what the pattern the writer was using, you know?
You know what's interesting is that I think there's a you can have a particular skill or aptitude, but if you have a kind of self-actualized knowledge in which you are confident in the skill you have, I think that's just almost kind of another level. So like you're looking at
Well,
yourself. Well, you're looking at
you're
yourself
getting-
and you're saying, I'm able to do this. Now, there's two parts to that. One is if you can humbly just understand, oh, I'm able to do this. Like I can run I can run this lap in under, 4 minutes, whatever it is. And you can do it every time. And by data alone, you could say, I've been able to do this before, I can do it now. That's one thing.
Right.
There are those though that say I could do this, and they speak it out of pride and inflation.
Right.
And they're not assessing objectively whether they can do something or not. They just
Yeah.
have kind of almost in a biased way looked at their own data of their lives and said, I'm very gifted or good at this, and they're
Well,
really not. So you got to be
you're
careful
also-
about that because you're also not able to you're not able to do what you stated you were able to do, which creates a dissonance.
Well, and you're also kind of getting into the whole various level of genius,
Yeah.
where you have kinesthetic genius, you have musical genius, and now they're starting to divide it up into, well, maybe this person is not a genius in math, but maybe they're like exceptional in music or art or something.
Well, the tough thing
like
about that word is that word was really designed, and you
Yeah.
obviously know what it comes from, but it's really designed to be exceptional, based on the common, and
Yeah.
so in that there's so many different variants off the common. It's really
Yeah.
hard to call anybody a genius anymore,
I know.
or anything because we
That's
don't really
why
have anything that's
Mensa
worthy.
is almost a passe kind of a thing.
Yeah,
you
it's
know?
not, it doesn't. I don't think, and certainly,
But
with
but-
with the different kinds of stuff that is available now, technologically, and that we didn't have before. That people,
Right.
a lot of people that couldn't do just basic skills can do this
Now
at a
can.
high level. What are you calling
Yes.
them? Yeah.
I know. That brings up the second question that I had, which is you had mentioned that a person should be able to do this at this grade level. What about
And
the
age.
person in age? What about the person that missed out on, like, for instance, I used to teach at Sylvan Learning Center, and I would get kids that would come in that they would have difficulty with math. And what I found out is that somewhere along the line, they missed out on just the concept that division is just the inverse of multiplication. And so a lot of my students, I would teach them, look, if you could just learn how to count, I mean, everybody can count by twos, everybody can count by fives and tens. What if you learn how to do that by threes or sixes or nines? And when I would teach the kids how to count by 3, 6, 7, 9s or whatever, then all of a sudden multiplication became really easy for them. And as a result, when they realized that division was just an inverse, then division became really easy.
Mm-hmm.
But some of these kids were being, and of course this is, been several years ago now, but some of these kids were being diagnosed with all sorts of different learning disabilities by the school. And I was like, and then as a result, we're also being given medications. And I was like, the kid was only frustrated and he's acting up in class because somewhere along the line he missed how to multiply by 8s, and now he's mad and angry because he doesn't understand what's going on. And it's like, we fix this one issue and it would fix a whole bunch of other issues behaviorally. They're going on. I'll give you an example. Last night, Trevor and I watched an older British detective show called Cracker. And the guy is a psychologist or a psychiatrist, one or the other, that works with the police department. And one of the characters was this guy that had a really bad stutter. And because of it, he just kept getting more and more frustrated. And he ended up dating this girl that wanted to have a bad boy as a boyfriend. And she basically worked him into being their whole relationship being a Bonnie and Clyde type of relationship. And it all stemmed from his frustration as not being able to talk well. There's a disability, but the other kid that's being a brat because he doesn't have the ability to multiply by 8, they're both coming at it, getting frustrated and acting out in the same way. But the one is not a learning disability, it's just something he missed. The other one is actually a physical or physiological problem that he can't fix. How can you tell, like, if you're a parent at home and you're like, I don't know if my kid needs medicine or if he just needs to know how to learn how to multiply better? I mean, how does a parent figure that out?
Well, it's so multifarious. But what you're doing with the Sylvan students is really what special education is. And you have to kind of diagnose what's going on. You have a variety of factors. There's a lot of chicken and egg there. There's a lot of progression. There's a lot of series kinds of things. Sometimes there's a lack of exposure to the right.
But is there a hut with chicken legs?
Yeah.
Involved?
Yeah, there is. There's a Baba.
Oh, there is over on the Hidden Citadel
there
channel.
So, and there are times where you could have a kid who seems like his motor is going too fast. He's very impulsive. But then again, the kid may have figured out early that what is being taught him doesn't make any sense for him. So he's found interest in thinking about other things and becoming more impulsive. That's where you kind of get like the erroneous kind of like, well, we got to medicate him. But medication does nothing for learning. It really does.
Right.
I mean, it can do things to.
Sometimes it's detrimental to learning.
Well, it'll slow down the thinking, or there's a paradoxical kind of thing that with certain kids that they're looking for so much stimuli that if you give them some accelerants, almost like a Ritalin, it satisfies the energy that they're looking for and gets them to be calmer. So it has a paradoxical effect, and that makes them more, that could allow them, with the right teaching, to have more access to more information that will then be grafted into what they already know and allow them to move up. Now,
well, in my experience with that,
to your point though, that if you get frustrated early on, that can create a behavioral reaction and a lack of response to education and a lack of response to remediation over time, that you've actually almost built up a defense against it, an inoculation that has caused antibodies, intellectual antibodies to go, I can't learn this, so I'm not going to learn. So they've then identified themselves as a non-learner, which is really difficult then to say, let me try to reach you in order for you to be able to catch up with where you want to be in the first place.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's why I go back to, especially with math, and I keep thinking about this one particular kid that, well, actually there's a couple kids that I'm thinking of. Once they were put on the medicine, it was like trying to teach a rock how to do math. I mean, they just were not there. And
Yeah.
of course, again, this was almost 30 years ago now.
Yeah.
So I'm sure that the medications have changed, but they're still using a lot of the same medicines. But the point was, the kid at first was a little bit hyper, but if I'm like, okay, we're going to do something fun, just give me a couple seconds here and let's work on learning how this part of the math thing, it's like I could work with the kid and he could learn something. After the medicine, it was like I could sit here and talk till I'm blue in the face. This kid's not hearing me.
Yeah.
You know, he's just not there anymore.
Sedate. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like he might as well be taking a nap because, I mean, that's about as much learning as we're getting done. I have another kid right now that he's kind of all over the place, and the mom is like, you got to sit there and you got to learn this, and you know, you're going to get in trouble when we get home, or you're not going to get ice cream, or you're not going to get whatever, you know, when we get home. And I'm like, he's a 5-year-old. He's going to be squirrely. It's like if I can get him just to know that that's the note C on the piano, then I've succeeded today, you know? And it's kind of like eventually it's going to be fun. With the math kids, if you associate 2, 4, 6, 8, well, kids do that when they're playing games and they're counting. Okay, well, if you can just say, okay, well, let's learn to do that with 3s. Let's learn to do that with 4s, you know? And then it's like, okay, well, that's kind of a fun thing because you're thinking, oh, yeah, we could do that when we're playing a game. It's like, then it becomes an interesting thing. But I think, the funny thing is, this one kid I have in my mind in particular, his mom was actually one of my teachers when I was in school, and she was the most boring teacher of any teacher I ever had. And she was so boring, in fact, that I failed that class because I couldn't learn anything from her. Well, it's like she's the type of teacher, she'd turn her back to the class and talk to the blackboard the entire time and never for an hour turn around and answer a question or anything.
She wasn't a teacher.
No, she wasn't. I'm like,
a teacher, like, strangely, this is an awful reference, but Nietzsche talked about you cannot have a shepherd without the sheep. You cannot call that person a shepherd if they're not doing what they're doing. So you cannot call yourself a teacher unless you have students, and the students are defined by whether they're learning from you.
Exactly.
So he had a whole discourse on what the objects really define the overseers. You can't have a leader unless you have those who are following you. So, and those who are following you are those that there's evidence that they have subjected themselves to you in a way. And so it's the same thing. If you're a teacher, then you have to have students who are learning, or you're not a teacher.
Well, and she had a 7-year-old son that I was teaching, and he was a good kid. He was just a little bit rowdy because he was a little boy. And I also had her daughter, who was a very sedate kind of person, a lot like she was. And then one day the kid came in and he was a zombie. I mean, I couldn't teach him anymore because he was so jacked up on medicine, and it was just like, what is the point of this? I mean, this was, to me, a complete and utter misdiagnosis of this kid's problem. The kid's problem was he was a boy. and his mom didn't know how to handle a little boy, so it's like the answer must be we just give him a lot of medicine. And I'm like, no, that's not the answer at all. But a lot of people, and I'm finding that a lot of people that come to my channel are people that they don't trust the school system for this very, situation where a lot of times people just want to over-medicate rather than get to the root of whatever the problem might be.
Yeah, but look what you're doing. The difference is when you assess a kid and try to figure out what's going on, you're spending time analyzing them, and that's what you're supposed to do. If they're and you're genuinely trying to get teaching results from the kid, and it's not 100% efficiency. When you're teaching, if you're teaching a certain amount of information, only a percentage of that is something that's going to, first of all, sink in the moment, and even less than that, stay with them to be internalized as their own over a long period of time. But if you're not doing any of that, then you're really not doing what you're supposed to be doing as a teacher, and you're just occupying the same space and hoping that they catch up with whatever you're not doing in the first place, which is
exactly.
So the frustration that that parents may have has really more to do with the intervention system isn't very efficient for their own kid, and maybe collaborating with the intervention system may be important, because like what you said, we do a lot of parent training with our families, almost introducing them to who their kid is in the moment. They may have regarded them as who they wanted them to be when they were first born, or even when they were younger, but who they are in the moment, socially, intellectually, cognitively, and a lot of those things, that you kind of have to, all right, this is where they are in the race. You make sure that you're running with them, because you have to run with them.
Yeah,
we'll run with them too.
I've experienced that with music students, where I remember specifically a Japanese lady. She came to me, this was when I was teaching at a conservatory in Texas. Mm-hmm. She came to me and she said, well, she couldn't speak English for one thing, and my Japanese was a little limited, but we kind of worked it out. Yeah, ikaga desu ka? Anyway, she hands me these books, and she was like, "This my country." I was like, "Yeah, okay, I get it. It's in Japanese." Yeah. And she was like, "I want him to play like," and she showed me some. It was all this one particular famous Japanese pianist.
Okay.
And the kid spoke pretty good English, so he was kind of translating for her, and he's like, "Yeah, my mom really likes this guy. He's famous in Japan." I was like, "Okay, well, what do you want to do?" He said, "I want to play soccer." And I was like, "Okay, well, but what kind of interest do you have in the piano?" He says, "Absolutely none." And I was like, "Well, why are you doing this?" Because he's like, "I'm Japanese, and my mom says I'm playing the piano." And I was like, "Okay, well, that well, how can I argue with that?" And I was like, "Well, try to make it as fun as possible." But I said, "You need to tell your mom that I did take Japanese in school, but I can't read what is on this." And what was weird about the sheet music was everything was in Japanese on the sheet music, and it was like even like some of the directions like that should be in Italian were actually written in Japanese. And I'm like, yeah, I don't have a clue I got a kind of an idea of what this sounds like, but and even some of the symbols were different. Like the Japanese music notation system was slightly different than the rest of the world's music notation system. And I was like, this is just too confusing. I can't use these books to teach you piano. No, my mom insists these are the books that I have to use. And I'm like, then I can't teach you. You're going to have to find a Japanese piano teacher, Mm-hmm. And I could not get through to that lady. And my boss was on my back to sell the books that she stocked. Yeah. And I was just like, it's not just because I want to use the books that we have in stock. It's I can't read these books, And but the mom had determined my kid is going to be this pianist because he's my hero and I really, really love him. And it's like, but maybe that kid doesn't have the aptitude to be a great pianist or something. It's like with my kids, I always tried to figure out, well, what are you good at and what do you want to do?
I mean, there's cultural things there as well that, there's a certain criteria of what excellence is in certain cultures. And so there's this automaticity that, all right, we're going to put them on this path, and here's the boxes, these are the milestones you're going to have to cover in this amount of time, so that your resume of who you are as my child matches up with what my expectations are. So we've had conversations with parents about seeing the kid can do this. It's not that he can't do what it's not that he doesn't want to do what you want him to do. Look what he's doing, and this is what's available to him. And by having him do the other thing, essentially like, it's like an eagle who is in a walking race, a peregrine falcon in a biped race, and
he can do it
continually losing. All right, but put
But
him in
it's,
the air,
yeah,
and then see who
yeah, and see
wins.
what he does.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, I remember another kid years ago that I was teaching, and his mom wanted him involved in everything.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like he went to taekwondo, he went to piano, he went to soccer, and all this, and sometimes it would conflict. And I remember one time having a conversation. I was like, "Why do you insist on having him in every activity?" Well, it's good for him. And I was like, "Well, that's debatable." And I was like, "I just want you to understand your kid could be the next Billy Joel. That's how good he is on the piano." And I said, "But I can tell you right now, he's not going to be Pele, you know."
Yeah.
And when he's 30, he might still be playing a little bit of soccer with his buddies. When he's 40, he's not going to be playing soccer, and when he's 50, he's definitely not going to be playing soccer. But he could be in his 80s and still be playing the piano.
Yep.
You know, and I was like, I'm just telling you right now, your kid is that good, he could be a professional piano player.
One of the Victor Borga, is that his name?
Yep, yeah.
It was either because he did a lot of, like, was it vaudeville or whatever. He did a lot of comedic
Yeah.
kinds of stuff.
Comedy
But he was
stuff.
actually like
He was serious.
He was very serious. But he would practice every day, and he was in an interview,
Yep.
and they said, do you practice every day? He goes, yes, because I have to. And he said, what happens if you don't practice every day? He goes, if I don't practice every day, and if I play something, play it, and it'll be excellent, and you'll think it's excellent, but I'll know what I did wrong because I didn't practice it.
Yep.
So he goes, I know the standard of where I need to be, and it takes me to practice every day to get there. If I don't, I can make something that you would find good. I wouldn't, though, because I know what I did wrong. I knew that I was doing it wrong because I hadn't practiced, which is really interesting.
Yeah. Hey, look, we're at the half-hour mark.
Yeah.
How about we take a break, and then we pick this up and do more of it some other time.
Sure.
And we'll continue there.
Yeah,
So we will cut it right here, folks.
Okay.
So we have not covered two things that I want to cover. I want to know about, well, we kind of touched on it before, adults who think they may have been misdiagnosed or non-diagnosed with an issue. And then I want to wrap up and discuss actual practical exercises that people can do that will either help them overcome some sort of disability or help them increase their brain, function, or and it really doesn't matter if they're somebody with a disability or they're somebody that just wants to increase their brain function. So those are like the two things that I want to kind of make sure that we kind of discuss. So we talked a lot about understanding what a disability and how you diagnose a disability. We talked about the types of disabilities that there are. But the one thing that I don't think we really hit on was like adults, like when they get older and they think, man, something's wrong. You did mention that, well, my dad gets mad, and so I think he has
bipolar.
Yeah. And it's like, well, no, he's just a fireman and it's a hard job.
Yeah.
What about somebody like, I have a former student that she's in her 30s, and she recently was diagnosed, and they said, yeah, you're on the spectrum, you're autistic.
Yeah.
And you never got diagnosed when you were a kid. And she was like, well, that really explains an awful lot of some of the problems that I've dealt with in my life. And I don't know. One thing, I do feel like autism is kind of the flavor of the month lately, and they want to diagnose everybody as being autistic. And I don't know how much of this is so they can just sell some new medicine, or I don't know enough about it, but I don't trust the pharmaceutical companies that much.
Well,
anymore.
There's really no pharmaceutical for autism. The one
okay.
So there's a benefit and detriment here. The detriment is the true nature of autism is really called a low incidence disability. that means it cannot be prevalent. It means statistically it cannot be in it. It really can't be increasing in a way because the nature of the diagnosis includes a lot of pretty impairing conditions. So if you have somebody that's lived her whole life and has functioned and just has been kind of like off and whatever and that sort of thing, and or maybe has not had satisfying relationships and that sort of thing, but is still communicating and is able to have receptive, expressive, um, interactive, socially functional, maybe not socially satisfying, has had, and here's one of the more important ones. It's called theory of mind, and it's really your understanding of the perceptions of others, that sort of thing. But the whole thing has to be truly impairing, needing intensive intervention. So
Well,
if
I
none of
think that
those
kind of
are
goes with her
true,
situation.
well, let me get to this. So
Yeah.
there's you can there's misdiagnosis even in children right now who are impaired. They might have a lot of the boxes that you'd have with autism, or they might have a combination of many disabilities which mirrors the
Mm,
one. And I would say it's more accurate to go with the many than the one, but
and the
the
one.
umbrella is often chosen for two reasons. One, it's kind of more acceptable than some of the others. Two, the services that are available are um, are more abundant than the others. And then the third thing is it just kind of like it gives a quick summary. It's almost like, oh, now that I know this, I can move on. Now
Yeah.
the
So
best,
basically,
but see, I
it
think the
it
detriment is you can't walk around with that saying that's what I have, because you're almost walking around with a form of denial and deceit as a part of it. Well, let me get to the benefit. The benefit.
that makes sense.
So the
Yeah.
benefit though is there's a guy named Mel Levine. He's a well-known pediatrician. He ended up, I think, committing suicide because I think he crossed the line. Like he ended up not being a very great person. But what he worked with a lot of high functioning, like autistic and Asperger kind of um, late teens, early 20s. And what he found was he would do something called demystifying, because they were truly like they were impaired, and they were like, but they didn't understand why they're impaired because they had enough kind of uh kind of self-perception to go, something's wrong here, I don't know what it is, but they would go into situations and fail, which is
Yeah.
not what other people do anyway. But he said, and he'd explain to them that they have autism. When he explained that to them, that now they could go in and go, all right, these are the adjustments I have to make because this is what I have. That's the
Hmm.
benefit of it. It's really not a great solution. Um, I don't think if it's inaccurate, but if it is
Hmm.
accurate and you understand, once I understood that I had like scoliosis or spondylolisthesis with my back, then I knew what I could do to not have that pain anymore, and I
Right.
adjusted everything in my lifestyle accordingly. But
Hmm.
I don't like the idea of an umbrella, the late life kind of diagnoses just to give someone relief from maybe just eccentricities. We have a lot of synonyms that
Hmm.
that are better descriptions. Like if someone goes, "I was really depressed." Oh, you really so over a period of 6 months, you were impaired from showering, getting up. If I went through the whole thing, well, no. Well, then guess what? You were sad. You were disappointed. You had morose.
Right.
You had dysthymia. You had, like, I could list all the things that they probably really had, which are not as impairing, but they're descriptions. And these are not synonyms that are just supposed to color a language. These are more accurate
Well,
descriptions of
what do
how people
you?
are. Well, the other,
Well,
you have that in scripture. I'm sorry. The other thing you have in scripture as well, the Bible, where you don't just have wisdom, you have intuition, you have common sense, you have insight, you have a bunch of different things that you have throughout scripture, which means those are different kinds of aspects of the benefits of thinking with the, not only the spirit, but with participating in the divine nature, as Paul would say.
so
Go ahead.
let me ask you. You have if somebody's depressed, you said they have a period of 6 months or more where they can't shower, they can't walk. But what about people like where they have, and I'm kind of this way, and I think, and I tell my kids, artists are like this. You have some periods of intense activity, and then other periods where you're just like, I can't even think anymore. But it's a short period. It's
Yeah.
not your 6 months. But some people get this to where it's like, okay, I'm ready to jump off a bridge right now
Okay.
when they hit the down, and it's not really, I wouldn't call it bipolar,
Yes, I
but
would.
it's definitely. Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I would say there are times, and you've described things to me before the entire time I've known you. I remember one time you said that you're painting like at 3 in the morning, and Trevor's like, "Aren't you coming to bed?" You're like, "I'm almost done painting." Those rushes that you have, those sudden things, those flourishes, are probably a really minor um occurrence of you. It's not impairing, but you just have those things because if you think about it, if this is zero and you
Yeah.
have your energy goes into giving you this that increases, well, what has to happen here? You
You
come
have to go
back
to
down.
the
But
opposite
what you
side.
feel is two things. One is you either come down to zero, which you're going to feel the reduction of energy, which is going to feel depressive, or you're going to go below zero because of just the not just the exhaustion, but the not having that euphoria anymore as a
Right.
way of being interpreted by our brain as being sadness. And so
Yeah.
you have those surges, and you just once you know it, you just got you kind of know it, but you just don't know what it's called. And it really
Yeah.
was it's more of by a very kind of mild version, not diagnosis version
Yeah.
of bipolar 2, because bipolar 2 has
Well,
more about the
I think
mania and
all
less about the
artists
ability.
have
Yeah.
that. If you're an artistic
Inspiration, sure.
personality, that's the way you work.
Yeah.
You
Well,
know, and
let me
that's
go
why
well let
I
me go
think people. Hold on. I
okay.
think people that aren't artistic,
Hmm.
they think something's wrong with artists, and
Yeah.
that's why our society doesn't really. I don't. They don't really appreciate the artist mindset much. But on the other hand, it's like the old Greek saying, "The best generals are rhapsodes, but never let a rhapsode be your general."
Yeah.
And it's kind of like with artists, we shouldn't be giving them as much voice as we do because we're all kind of nuts.
Yeah.
It's just the way that it's the
Everybody's
nature
nuts.
of being an
Yeah.
artist,
Yeah.
of being an artist, you
Yeah.
know?
Well, I just wanted to go back and amend. I was just giving the the depressive criteria is extensive. I just gave a couple of like it be not showering does not mean you're depressed.
Yeah.
I don't want to be walking away with like
Yeah, you
that
just
guy
might be a
that
dirty
guy.
person.
And right, yeah. You just enjoy the filth and the smell. And that's fine. I was actually just talking to a guy yesterday who said that he is going through a depressive bout, and he goes, "I'm having trouble just basic eating, sleeping, showering. I don't.
Yeah.
It's kind of like the why even bother kind of thing.
Yeah.
And it's like why put energy into something that I don't even care about right now. I don't care about people. That's what he's kind of going through. So
Yeah.
and that if you can hear that is. Does he want to be this way? No. Is it keeping him from other things? Yes. Does he wish he could do all those things? Yes. That's where the depression comes in, not just the feeling of disappointment and sad or being stoic or being uninspired. I mean, I think that like what you're talking about with the artists, I mean, it could be with even writers having a time of inspiration. It gives meaning because it's almost like the tool that you're using has now been given strength. Let's say it was a shovel, and it gives strength to dig. Well, what happens when you lose that energy or that strength or you're fatigued and you have the tool but you can't do it? It's going to feel depressive, right? So
Yeah.
if you're a writer and you get that way, like I have a feeling like David Foster Wallace and Sylvia Plath, they had these times of like I can express, and then when they lacked that, they looked in the mirror at themselves and it's like, what's wrong with me? Instead of
Yeah.
awaiting the next, rejuvenating the inspiration.
I think that's true. I think that, like, even now, too, now that all my kids are out of the house, I've been going through a really hard time dealing with now what, and it's
Yeah.
been a very sad kind of a situation.
Yep.
And and I think different things like that come along in life that really challenge us, and it's real easy to especially if you're more of an addictive type of person, to try to fix those issues with alcohol or drugs
Yep.
or risky behavior or something like that. And what I've told my kids is if you have those, you just got to embrace it, and you just got to take that time and say, okay, now it's the time to refuel.
Yep.
And so it's kind of like,
Exactly.
okay, I don't feel like doing much of anything. Let me watch movies that are going to spark my interest again. Let me listen to music that's going to spark my interest again. And it's like, that's how I've learned to kind of deal with those troughs, you
Yeah.
know?
I had the same. It's so funny you just said that because I was explaining to someone yesterday because I was saying that I was excited about the parafable that we did, and she's like, I'm kind of jealous that you have the passion to do this kind of thing. And I go, it's more like input output. I get something, and it's the way I'm made. I get something, and it generates something that I need to express. Then, so I
Mm-hmm.
can't watch cover bands for that long because I have to then go home and I get inspired to go play or watching a
Yeah.
concert or watching whatever.
Yeah, me
But
too.
if I want to write, thanks, monkey. If I want to write,
Yeah.
um, I there's certain like Tolkien, there's certain things that I know I can go to, and they get like this show on uh Disney, the Defenders that has
Mm-hmm.
Daredevil, and like watching something like that, it just I begin to, oh yeah, okay, I can see that, like all of a sudden now I
Right.
need to. And the show Sandman is one of my favorites. It's
Mm-hmm.
that just season 2 just came out on Netflix. But like if I'm gonna write songs, it's Sting and Melissa Etheridge for whatever reason. I can just go,
Yeah.
if I'm listening to either of them, I'm like, huh. All of a sudden I'm like, okay, I start getting, but
Sting
I know my
always makes
sources.
me
Yeah.
want to write music,
Yeah.
and Bob Dylan. It's like those are my two.
Yeah. Dylan's a big one for a lot of people, I feel like.
You know, the thing about Dylan is it's like there's so many eras of Dylan, and he's been around for so long, and he's used so many different techniques. But Dylan has talked about this whole thing about how there are time periods when he can't write songs anymore,
Yeah.
and then he has to find a new way of doing it, and it's a necessity of making money. Like, the interesting thing about Dylan is the man is completely and utterly wealthy, but he doesn't feel wealthy.
Yeah.
And so he feels like he's got this work ethic that he has to keep, working. And it's really interesting when you hear him talk about it or write about it. And it's like, okay, so if you are in a trough and you have to come up with something, then it's like, okay, well, try a different way
Yeah.
of doing whatever it is that you do. Um, and I think the other thing too, and this is something I experience a lot, and I think other artistic people deal with this, is a lot of artistic people are really good one on one.
Hmm.
We're like, I guess you could call artistic people like social introverts. They do really well, like if they have an artistic gallery or something, they're happy that they get to show their work off, but afterwards they're exhausted. And it's kind of like when I was a pastor, I could get up on Sunday and preach a really good sermon, but after church I was exhausted, and it took everything out of me, and I had to go take a
Yeah.
nap or something because it just sucked every last bit of life out of me
Yeah.
to do that. And I think that people that are artists, a lot of times they have a really hard time being their own managers and promoters
Hmm.
and things like that. And it's like, I suck at that. Like, I haven't had a gig in years because I gave up. I'm like, I am not doing this part of the business
Yeah.
anymore. I'm not going to go. I'll play if anybody asks me to come play,
Hmm.
but I am not going to be the guy doing my own booking anymore. I hate it. And and so like one of my buddies, he's been helping me get gigs doing like Renaissance shows because I'm just like, he wants to do that kind of work, and I'm like, I don't want to do that kind of work
Hmm.
at all,
Hmm.
because I absolutely despise calling people, cold calls,
I
figuring
know.
out the contracts, figuring out the money aspect. I don't want to do any of that. And I think a lot of artists are that way. And I don't think that people that are not, a lot of times when you meet people that are good at that kind of stuff, they look at the artists and they're like, what the heck's wrong with them?
Hmm.
You know, if I was, I'd do this and this and this. And it's like they can't do that, and that they need you, and that's why like a lot of non-artistic people um, don't understand how valuable they are to an artist type, and they don't understand how discouraged the artist type gets when they don't have that person in their life helping them because they're not capable. And that's why a lot of times you see people that are successful, like Brian Wilson's wife, Melinda. She was that type. She helped him. She was the one that came in and said, I'm going to do all this for you,
Yeah.
and you just continue to create and do
Yeah.
good stuff. And it's like,
Sharon
that's just
Osbourne, the same. Yeah.
exactly for Ozzy, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Well,
you need somebody like that.
the interesting thing is, I think when you have when you're kind of a solitary expressionist, we'll say that means that you're an artist unto yourself, and you create works that you're identified with, and that you've created a standard, and you have one of the worst things is the feedback. When other people, that praise comes in, now it starts inflating where you think you need to be, and everything you do, if it doesn't match up or better than it, then you have that gap that I was talking about between where you think you should be and where you are, and that becomes depressive, because that's what
Mm-hmm.
that gap is. So, but you do have more functional artists who can go a lifetime producing amazing things. You and I just talked about them, like a comic
Mm-hmm.
book writer,
Yeah.
or I mean, sorry, comic book artist, and that person is using their art all the time, and they're creating, but they're not stopping. They're not a cul-de-sac. They're not stopping and
Mm-hmm.
having to kind of contend with what their own expectations are, what their own, because they're meeting the criteria of the story. So it's almost like they're on the conveyor belt, and they can keep producing satisfactorily and even excellently over time.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll tell you another one is John L. Williams. John L.
Mm-hmm.
Williams could just go, let me just do an album of John L. Williams. But he keeps,
Yep.
hey, we have this scene, and it's almost like the function itself of the job is allowing the relief that they don't have to match up to their own expectations, and in doing so their excellence is coming out in their work naturally
Mm-hmm.
and kind of functionally, without needing to go, I have to do something that's almost keeping me from doing something.
Yep.
you
Well,
know
that's what I like about doing the Hidden Citadel
yeah,
and all this kind of stuff is because I'm on a deadline
yeah,
in a sense. And it's
yeah,
like, and I get to work with you
yeah,
so that way it's not overwhelming.
yeah,
And then I can keep churning out stuff and being creative.
yeah,
And I like, and my son, we've had this argument. AI is evil. AI is taking away from actual artists, and it's like no, because I'm the one doing all the parameters when
yeah,
I'm telling it this is what I want. To me, it's like using Photoshop,
yeah,
using an AI art
exactly,
generator. It's
yeah,
that's all it is. And it's like I understand. I've been reading articles about people that it's like their brain function isn't working anymore, and I'm like, yeah, because they're relying 100%. They're not using the AI as a tool.
yeah.
They're using the AI as a replacement for their own brain. And it's like, to me, it's like, it's just another tool in the art box,
That's
you know?
that's the interesting thing, and it goes back to kind of like what you're talking about before, the initial thing of what you're doing to improve or decrease the likelihood of detriment with your neurological functionings. And what happens is with a lot with our phones, one of the like it stopped us from needing to remember like phone numbers and people's phone
Mm-hmm.
and just basic contact information because it's there now. If we if we say, all right, this is taken care of, so I can do other kinds of thinking, that's healthy. If we're just
Mm-hmm.
doing this, allowing our contacts on our phone to be essentially another lobe of our brain that is functioning
Mm-hmm.
for us, but we're not increasing anything, then it's not doing anything for us.
Yeah.
In other words, we're
Well,
too dependent, and we go, all right, what's this number? I don't know, I don't have my phone.
exactly. I feel like in the old days, you could be a village idiot and people would be like, oh, yeah, he's just dumb. nowadays we have an entire society of village idiots that nobody would recognize that they're stupid,
Yeah.
but they really are. But they can sit there and talk about the latest news that popped up on TikTok or the
Yeah.
latest trends or anything like that, but really they're functionally moronic because they don't know anything, because they're not really learning. They're just regurgitating for
Yeah.
that. And I'll bet if you interviewed them 10 years later about what was cool at this time period, they would be like, "Oh, I don't remember," because they're focused on what's cool right now because they're still doing the same thing of doom scrolling, you
Yeah.
know. And
Yeah.
it's a mind sucking device is really what Instagram, and that's the one aspect about the Hidden Citadel or art or any of my other channels, the frogs.
Hmm.
It's like I have a real hard time keeping up with the extra incidentals. Like I can put together a good program, but it's all that little mindless doom scrolling stuff that they want you to produce. I don't want to make that
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the thing. It's
We've
like
got
I
new
just
rules. Yeah.
yeah, it's like no, I'm not. I don't want to be a part of that sort of a situation. But you kind of have to do it. But it's like if we could find somebody that wants to do it, that would be a much better
I know.
situation.
I feel like there are people that would like to do it. It's
We just gotta find them.
and generally they like to do it because they like to do it their own. But it's like, yeah,
Exactly, I
yeah.
know. Well, and that's the thing. Everybody wants their 15 minutes of fame. Okay, talk to me though about exercises. There are things that can help build your
Yeah.
brain. I just want to go over some things that you know about that maybe I don't know about that my viewers will say, "Oh, I can implement that," and that would be something helpful for whether they're an artist or whether they just want to have a better brain. What do you recommend for people?
So we'll start here. There's one of the things that with anything in life, you start with if there's if there is if there's a necessity to intervene on something, whether it's like if you broke your leg and you had PT and you're restoring and you get it back to functional use, your PT doesn't end there. They'll say, "Oh, remember to do this and this to keep from atrophy." Okay, so
Mm-hmm.
but if you operated in life going through, okay, wait a minute, what are all the things that in life I can do that I haven't broken my leg, but I can follow general principles to prevent atrophy, right? It would be
Mm-hmm.
those would be very beneficial to maintaining not just life functions, but a wellness of sorts, right? Okay,
Right.
so there's so we'll start with what the brain can do, what happens with the brain in an extreme form of deterioration, and generally speaking, it's more like dementia or Alzheimer's. So
Okay.
we got to look at where are there people? Is there a cluster or is there any research into people or any sort of behavior or anything like that, which has consistently or some research has shown that it can decrease the likelihood for Alzheimer's? And the answer is yes. And there's a convent in Minnesota in this convent just generally the many different women uh, from all over the world would go. Not they wouldn't go seeking this, but there's just where they ended up in this convent. It had the lowest occurrence of Alzheimer's among geriatric
Really?
people for years. I mean, it was just like, and the reason that the conclusion was that what these nuns, the stringent schedule that these nuns had, they come in young, and again from all the so this is a this the sample is not just from Minnesota, it's from everywhere. They
Right.
come in, and but still their time there would allow them to decrease the likelihood that you'd have this deterioration, this organic deterioration of the brain. What they would do is they'd start in the morning and they'd have a prayer time, then they'd have a rite to the missionaries, and then they have a time of just writing, and then they have a time of prayer, then they have a time of singing. And so what happens is they're essentially keeping, back to that wellness idea, keeping all parts of the brain operating just
Nice.
not excellently, but keeping it from atrophy by way of exercise. And if you think about, if you go to the gym and you just did biceps all the time, the
You
rest of you
have a big massive bicep
and
and a
you
tiny little body.
you never do cardio, you never do
Yep.
any, you never do any of the, like the, the more the aerobic kinds of things for core, for a lot of those things, then yeah, whatever your biceps ended up would not truly make you strong. It would just make
Right.
that part of you developed it, or maybe even not. And so it's the
Mm-hmm.
same idea that you have to have receptive information, expressive information. You have to kind of think of what the brain does. You have to have organizational information. Like there's your prefrontal cortex is very much responsible, among other parts, because whenever you talk about neurology, you don't talk about this is what this does. You say this works with other things and it's thought
Right.
to, because
Yeah.
it's very much like the cosmos. You go, we think it does this, we think it's
Yeah.
anyway, but your prefrontal cortex is a matter of your planning and your short term and your working memory. So you want to do things where you're memorizing things temporarily through the day. You want to do things where you're prioritizing, going, all right, this is what I have to do, this is what I have to do later. And you don't want to write it down. You want to be able to remember it, because
Yeah.
when you're doing that, then you're exercising something that'll be important for you to increase over time, so it doesn't atrophy. You want to be able to say, all right, let me not only learn a new word, internalize it, and use it, and make it functional, and replacing another word that I usually use.
Yeah. Or a
Um,
language, like a
or
vocab
like
in a
that's the
new
same idea.
language.
Yeah, another
Yeah.
language. So right, but graphomotor is a different part of the brain, where you're writing, where you're painting, where you're using your index and pincher fingers to do things, to express something, to make accurate depictions, to make circles. The concentration that it takes there, that's that comes from it's your eye, that's your occipital lobe. You have a lot of different things going on there. You also want to kind of practice, with the one of the most important things that you and I believe, but like even with prayer is really working on your limbic system and your amygdala, and those
Mm.
areas where you're moderating your emotional reaction and not letting them overtake or destroy or do anything, socially or emotionally or anything like that, by way of regulating and giving over what would usually happen. Like there's an experiment with the amygdala with a cat, and they had opened, I think whatever it was, the cat's brain was open to them, and they touched the amygdala with a
Yeah.
and the cat immediately went into such a ferocious attack of them out of nowhere, that they called,
Yeah.
from that, it was known as the rage center of the brain. um that in doing that, that's how I don't know. That's how provoking it is, and that's how dynamic
Yeah, we
that is.
talked in a hidden
We've talked about,
citadel about the assassin at Texas
yeah, and
had
the
a
guy in the
growth on his
watchtower, yeah.
amygdala.
But
Yeah.
but what's interesting about that is, if that's there, and then that needs to be regulated, because otherwise, if you act on just pure instinct without thought and without wisdom, how are you going to react? Now, in doing
Yeah.
so, is there any part of does the body react when it becomes overactive? Is there a problem? Yeah, there's a problem with heart, blood pressure, all kinds of things. When the body becomes overactive, too much sugar, too much,
Mm-hmm.
those things, everything, as the Bible says, everything in moderation, which is always funny to me,
Right.
because everything is not moderation. The word everything
Right.
is. But anyway, but that moderating what you do allows also for you to experience overall comprehensive health, rather than just in one area. And you can say, well, I'm trying
Mm-hmm.
to help my brain, so I'm doing Sudoku. No, you do some Sudoku, but then you do this.
Yeah.
And you want to kind of keep, as you get, my mom's actually doing a lot of this. I don't think she's doing it intentionally. She just does it out of
It's just how
just
she
interest.
is.
She's like doing crossword puzzles, jumbles. She does them all day long. Then she goes to the gym. Then she does what, and she's 90, doing great, driving, excellent. And
Yeah.
she does walking, and she does like,
Well, and your mom's sharp as a
aerobics,
tack.
Pilates, and she's amazing. And I don't think she's waking up in the morning going, "Oh no, if I don't check these boxes, what will happen?" This is just naturally who she is, and she has the energy
Yeah.
to do them. So
Your mom's kind of like, she should be like everybody's guide.
yeah, yeah,
How you should live your old life.
she's their spirit animal.
Yeah, right. We should make a Hidden Citadel workbook
Yeah,
or an art workbook of activities that
yeah,
people could just work through.
yeah,
And it could be kind of like a structured here's how you can order your day
Yeah.
as an elderly person to kind of keep your brain functioning. Maybe need to be the next thing on the radar,
Yeah, I mean that
because that would be
that
pretty
Minnesota
cool.
convent is really fascinating. I mean but it really goes in concert with what there with the decreased probability, because it's got to be probability of dementia or organic kind of
Yeah,
organic
because you
decay
can't rule out some people that
and
have
genetics. Yeah,
natural genetic or brain damage or a
or
injury or something like
or
that.
how the person was before they became a nun or
Right.
entered the convent,
But
because they could have been destructive. They could have had done some damage.
exactly. But the
So
other thing too, though, is just saying, okay, well, I have done all that. I have hurt my brain. I have had brain injury.
yeah.
Well, this stuff will still help,
Yeah,
overcome some of
neuroplasticity,
that.
neuroplasticity, and there it's interesting because I think the common thought was neurogenesis, neuroplasticity would end around 24, 25. But the
But it
neuroplasticity has
doesn't.
been found all the way up into people who are 80, which means
Yeah.
new neuron
Yep.
extension,
And they
new
found out
growth.
that fasting helps. Like if you do intermittent fasting or even long-term fasting,
Yeah.
it helps regenerate because you're getting new human growth hormone in
Hmm.
your body that goes and finds all the places that have been damaged, and it starts to rebuild
Yeah.
those places. So you can speed up your neuroplasticity to a certain extent too
Yeah.
by doing the exercise and by changing things like fasting or changing your diet, and I've got to do this, get sugar out of your diet,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
I have noticed some people have an inverse, like if they cut out all sugar, then they end up getting like brain fog and stuff like that too, which is an interesting
Well,
thing.
and we don't know what that is, because if you really think about it, having a certain amount of like we're talking about, you have energy expression, then energy retraction, or
Yeah.
energy depreciation or depression, right? Which means you energy runs out, and then what happens? You have a vacuum of sorrow.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you could also have those who have had a lifestyle that includes a lot of sugar or natural energy and sugar, that kind of thing. And when you reduce it, you can have both withdrawal, and you have, since nothing, you can have like almost a vacuum effect where now it's gone. Now you don't. Now what's happening? Now you haven't replaced it with anything, and now you essentially have to go through a recovery and almost a reset where you have to go. All right, my new identity is without it. What does that include? That includes my body responding to honey and to
Mm-hmm.
different kinds of things, that vitamin B, the different kinds of
Right.
things. So it makes a lot of sense that you would go through fog. It makes a lot of sense that you would go
Mm-hmm.
through, because I mean, it could have been to the point of an addiction, so that should be withdrawal. It could have also
That's
been
true.
that this was the way that you operated for a long time, so now you have to operate
So you
different.
got a
And
new operation manual.
yeah,
Yeah.
and then in that adjustment, it's going to feel a lot differently, just like with any other adjustment you'd have.
Hmm. All right, folks. This has been Greg Kemp that we have been interviewing here on the Art Channel. And if you like hearing us chit chat about crazy stuff, you can check out our other channel, The Hidden Citadel, especially if you're into weird stuff like
Yeah,
aliens and ghosts. We've talked about Mothman. What
yeah.
other stuff have we? We've
The
talked about
the
also
green children of Woolput.
Wool Pit, yeah.
Yeah.
This episode that just came out this week, as we recorded this, was a Tartaria
Oh,
episode.
are those the dragons?
Oh, the dragons. We recorded that this week,
Yeah.
but I meant the one that got
Oh yeah.
released
Yeah.
was Tartaria. We did do an episode on dragons, so
Hmm.
we've talked about all sorts of crazy,
The
weird
pyramids.
stuff. And if you're
Yep.
in pyramids, yep, and the Sphinx, if
Hmm.
you like this, go check out our Hidden Citadel channel, and I think we talk about a lot of psychology and spirituality over there as
Yes.
well. So
Yeah.
you probably like that. Um, and Greg has written some books. We've written books together,
Yes.
and you can go check out his stuff on Amazon. And but other than that, I hope you guys have a great day, and I hope something we said today was really helpful.
And
So we'll
inspiring.
see you later.
Yes.